Welcome to A Dose of Feel Good. I'm your host, Whitney Bischoff, and today we're going to be talking about learning to stop finding our happiness in others. You can see full show notes at doseoffeelgood.my.canva.site. Now let's dive into today's episode. Hello, everyone. I was so close to starting today's episode with singing a song, but no one wants that. So anyways, welcome back. Today we're talking about learning to stop looking for our happiness in others. And I have a big old grin on my face, so I think it's going to be a fun time today. So let's just get right into it, shall we? Apparently I have an accent today, so we're going to see how this all goes. Anyways, so I want us to take a second and ask ourselves the question, am I happy? Or if someone were to ask you today, like, are you happy? And what would your answer be? Yeah, I think that's kind of a punch to the gut sometimes. And we don't ask that question, like, are you happy? And I think then on top of that, it can be a hard question to even answer. It's like, what does that even mean? But I think it's then like following up that question of like, how do you know you're happy? How do we know that? I think we know kind of what that feels like in our core, but like, how do we come up with the words of like, am I happy? Oof, man, like, I don't know. And if we're not, like, we don't want that negativity to like, if I were to say, no, I'm not happy, like that's kind of a punch to the gut to the person who asked too. And so as people, it's hard, I think, to even answer that honestly, which is probably why we don't ask people that. But I think it is important, like, just taking that inventory for yourself now. Like, are you happy? Like, genuinely answer that. And be real, be raw, and be vulnerable with yourself. I know I talked about this last episode of, like, we mask that. And so we might say, yes, I'm happy. But, like, what does that even mean? And I think there's, like, at least for me, a variety of things that, like, I know I'm happy when I'm able to love myself. Whatever that looks like. Love even the decisions that I've made that aren't fantastic. We all have those. But I have learned, and sometimes you have to learn to be happy and knowing what that means for you. But, like, I get so happy with the small wins in my life at the moment, because life has been kind of kicking me in the face recently. And so I know I'm happy when I can appreciate those small wins. I know I'm maybe not in such a happy place when, like, I can't find joy or gratitude in those small wins. So I think it kind of starts there. And okay, the title today, Stop Looking for Happiness in Others. So this is going to be a little light bulb moment, or maybe not make us feel super good, but we're going to say it and just kind of hold ourselves accountable, I think, a little bit. But if you're somebody like me, I had to write this down and be like, oh, yep, here we are. But when we expect everyone else to bring us joy and happiness, when that is found in everyone else, I hate to break it to y'all. I broke it to myself. We're going to be disappointed. Like, that's just how it is. Like, we can't expect that out of everybody else to bring us happiness and joy. Like, that's a lot of pressure for everybody that's around us. And so that's where I'm talking about, like, we have to love ourselves first and find that happiness within ourselves, because it's hard, but people leave, even the people that we at one point were closest to. Like, if you think of back to different friendships maybe that you had, like, a lot of the time people are not going to be around forever. And they might disappoint us. And I know having that grief from, like, I at one point was really close with this person and I'm just not anymore. And that's hard. And so when we rely on that happiness in everybody else, we are disappointed in the end. And that's just not a fun place to be in. And so I think telling ourselves that we are enough for ourselves. Like I am the only person that is going to be around for me forever in every opportunity, every space, and know all of the things that I've gone through. Like that's only a me thing. I can never tell somebody all of those pieces and then expect them to then bring me the happiness. Like that's too much for everybody else. And so we should be our own best friends, which sounds so cheesy, but also like be our own advocates in spaces that we need to be. Like no one else is going to do that for us. We can do that for ourselves. And I think when we get to that space where we stop looking for happiness in others, there's this transformational moment that happens. And I'm going to try to put that into perspective with some of the stories today. So I think, at least for me, like I have experienced a lot of grief, and I think I let that hold on to me for a really long time and kind of take over even my day-to-day actions. And so I think I've said this before. So I've lost both my parents, my dad when I was 7, my mom when I was 19. And it's this weird space that like I at one point was like, I don't think I can ever be genuinely happy without them. They're your parents. So they're those constant presence, and they often know you really, really well and can hold you accountable. And so when you lose that, like there's just so much grief and things to navigate through. And I think even for me, like I'm somebody that needs validation in what I'm doing, feeling sometimes like I constantly have to prove my worth in spaces. And I think those two things come together because I think for a long time I was like, I couldn't even tell you what being happy looks like, right? Like I am just trying to get by the day to day and recognize what my new normal is. And that took a lot of processing, but I've gotten to this place where I now know how to advocate for myself and really like lean into what I'm passionate about. And if you were to ask me that maybe even 3 years ago, no way. Like I was that person that just kind of like sat back. I did what was within my control and just didn't really push the mold or anything like that. And as I was navigating through all this grief and in a variety of spaces, I learned that like I cannot, even the people that I trusted most, like they did disappoint me. And I found this space where like when I advocate for myself, my needs, what makes me happy, that like my passion just kind of like floods out. And people tell me all the time, like, you're just so passionate. I'm like, yeah, I am. But it like now it's so funny because I'm like, I can brag about myself a little bit that like I found happiness, and it's such a great space to be in. I no longer feel like I have to find that happiness and joy in everybody else, and whether they're going to validate, whether they're going to accept me. Like at this point, I'm like, I don't care. Right? I am genuinely happy with where I am. A lot of the choices that I make, like, I'm just going to own them. They all have a purpose and a reason. And so I just had this like aha moment, like someone broke me down to like as small as I could be. Like I just felt like a bug that was getting squished over and over. And I advocated for myself, and I have never felt, I think, comfortable doing that. And I felt that happiness. I felt that joy. And that's that transformational moment that like people now see me, and they're like, wow, like there's this whole new persona, this new energy. And I'm like, yeah, and we are out here living for it. And I think it helps now that like I am in this transformational space that like I'm genuinely thankful for each day that I'm given, the people that I interact with, and if they like me, they like me. If they don't, that's their issue. It's not mine. And I think that, at least for me, like I know that is that I've reached this point where I am genuinely happy, but it does take some reflection and definitely some work. But I think the impact when we find that space, like when we finally have that transformation that we are enough for ourselves and can bring us our own joy, we prove to ourselves that it can be done, that we don't necessarily have to rely on everyone else. Like, I have enough just within me to bring that joy and that happiness. And as someone who I like people, I like being around people, but I've finally gotten to this space where like independence is a gift to me, and not independence of like spending all this time alone, but like just having my own independent thoughts and feelings and actions, and that I just own it, and it brings this joy to me. But that's we tend to rely on others, and so like once you break free from that, there's just so much freedom, and like I can finally breathe a little bit. And it allows us to finally get to a place where, like, I now lean on others with the knowledge that it's not out of, I need them, right? I need this or that. But it's out of, I want to be around them. I want their energy that they bring to this place or plate. But if something were to happen, I don't think I'll get to the place where, like, when I was navigating all of this different grief, that if something were to happen, like, I don't need them. But I also think like wanting them has really like enhanced my relationships with my friends. Honestly, like my family members, like I want to be in their presence, and that when you come from that place of wanting people rather than needing them, the relationship actually grows stronger. It's this weird paradigm. But I think it also shows us that when we experience the lows, because we are all going to experience lows at some point, challenges, whatever you want to call it, but we know that we have the power to keep going because we can find those happiness and those joy moments, maybe from previously before the challenges occurred. But it allows us and tells us that we can keep going and we can keep fighting every single day because I've done it before. I can bring that happiness to myself. And so when that transformational moment happens, it shows us that even when we experience those hard things, we're enough and we can actually get through it. And it encourages us to keep fighting and doing. And shout out, I don't even know if they listen, but one of my friends on their Snapchat each day does like a cute little inspirational message. But at the end, it was like, keep going, keep fighting. And the first time I started seeing those, I was like, yeah. Like, I actually believe that I can do that. And that's just something really cool. So shout out there. So how do we actually put this into practice? So I have a couple of things. How do you experience that transformational moment when you stop looking for that happiness in others? And the first and the hardest part is to do the work. So knowing, what does happy actually mean to you? What does that mean? And I've done a lot of journaling. I've done a lot of, reading self-help books. I did finally go to therapy last year. Not for a long time, but for a bit. And it really helped. Like, I had to do the work of like, what does happy actually look like for me? And you can't lean into that until you know what that looks like for you. And so it starts with doing the work. And that is by far the hardest part. But give yourself permission to do that work for whatever makes sense and looks like for you. Like, navigate. We all deserve to be happy. And so giving yourself the space to recognize what that looks like for you, and how do I have that transformational moment? Because just because it worked for me or what has worked for me doesn't mean that that's what's going to work for you. So do that work, put that work in because you deserve it. I think it's then on top of that, on a very small level, but remind yourself that you're enough, that you are enough for yourself, even and especially when we are our own worst critics, and it's really hard to do, but remind yourself that you're enough for you and you can make yourself happy. Once we get to that transformational moment, I promise you, I thought for sure, no way, like I need people to make me happy, and I'm not in that space anymore. And so I promise that you can get there. But again, you have to do that work and remind yourself that you are enough, just as you are, for yourself. And then I think this is something that I'm still working on, but have yourself like a monthly me day. And so really leaning into like, these are the things that make me happy and doing those things, which I know is kind of a reiteration from last week's episode. but it is genuinely doing those things. So give yourself that permission to give yourself that happiness and what that looks like for you. So with that, that's how we're going to wrap up today's episode. So thanks for joining me. This was a topic I was really passionate about, so I'm sure you could hear that throughout the episode. So I hope you find that transformational moment for you and that you can really see what happiness looks like in a really authentic way. And just know that I promise you're enough for yourself just as you are. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you are feeling ready to conquer the week and let your impact ripple out to the world around you. Let's connect on Instagram and Threads at Dose of Feel Good Podcast. If you're loving the podcast, I'd love it if you'd hit that subscribe button and leave a review. Until next time, share your own dose of feel good and never underestimate the power of positivity.